طيب بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى اللهم وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. I want to welcome all of you inshallah who are joining us today for this online Fatwa session with Sheikh Ahmad Kutty. Today is Friday, June the 19th of year 2020. So the way that we are now live on our Facebook, we are live on YouTube, and we're also live on Twitter. If you'd like to ask questions, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, please do so at by making an actual comment if you would like in any one of those platforms, or you can send the actual question itself in one of the links that we have already posted in today. So there's a link that's on the bottom here. So ask your question in the comments or anonymously at the link that we have here. So inshallah ta'ala, I'm going to ask Sheikh Ahmad to begin inshallah by maybe giving us a brief introduction inshallah, and then we can go into the first question right away inshallah. Sheikh, Faddal.
والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. Ya Allah, teach us that which is beneficial for us and bless us in the knowledge you have granted us and increase our knowledge. It's my pleasure and honor to welcome you to this session. I have a number of questions that were given to me last week. So before taking on new questions, I will have to answer them first. The best practice would be for me to help you understand better, to write down your questions in advance. So if you send down your questions today or few days, I can answer them next Friday. That would be best, because we are talking about serious matters, and myself, I should also be mentally prepared to understand the question precisely so that I can give you precise answers. Now, with this introduction, I want to bring the first question that was handed to me last week, which we left for today. Can we say explicitly that the Quran was preserved in its original form? A few days ago, there was an issue with one scholar who seems to suggest that the Quran preservation was the most difficult thing for scholars even to comprehend. This question should not arise for Muslims who believe in the transmission of the Quran through the mutawatir channels. Muslims, regardless of the sectarian differences, from the early days down to modern times, have been unanimous in believing and stating firmly and clearly that there is only one version of Quran, and that is what we have in our hands today. And the Quran was transmitted as different. The transmission of Quran was different from the transmission of other scriptures. If you look at Bible or any other scripture, you know, even a Christian priest who would be reading the Bible, he would only read parts of the Bible for his liturgy, for his sermon. So he doesn't read the whole Bible. And the same is true of all other scriptures. As different from this practice, Muslims from the early days, from the very beginning of Revelation, has been reading the Quran, memorizing it, and transmitting it. They have been reading it in their prayers. And they would read, as you know now, we practice in our masajid, we complete the whole Quran, sometimes, a few times in Ramadan. We finish it in Qiyam sometimes, and we finish it in Taraweeh. And even ordinary Muslims, my own father, it was his habit to read at least 3 juz of Quran every single day. And my mother would do the same thing. And of course, we have here millions of reciters in the world today who have memorized the whole Quran. And I have personally listened to the recitation of the various Qur'an. And I have looked at the Mus'haf, the thing they are reciting from their memory exact. There is no letter, no discrepancy between the memorized version of the Quran and the version that we have in our hands. So Muslims believe the Quran has been transmitted through mutawatir channels. There were 700, Huffaz who were killed, martyred in that battle of Yamama. You see, so you can imagine how many people had memorized the Quran. And we have stories after stories of people going to Medina, and they were, if you go through the nights, through the streets of Medina at night, from every house, people are reading the Quran in their night prayers. They are, most of them, reading from their memory, and some reading from the copies of the Quran. So it is only those who are agnostics or have been brainwashed by the agnostic methodology, the Eurocentric methodology, the methodology that denies the revelation, who will be holding such views. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save us from this. There is no other Quran. This is not the case. There is with other scriptures. We have the example of, the late Professor Hamidullah, rahimahullah. In his book, The Emergence of Islam, there is a chapter here in his book on the preservation of the Quran. And he cites the story that they had a project, started in Europe, in Germany, to collect all of the copies of the Bible. Of course, the original Bible was not in Greek, but of course it's lost. So Greek translation of the original Bible, they collected all of the copies extent they could get hold of. And when they collected them, the report says some 200,000 contradictory narrations have been found. And then there is a sentence of this 1/8 are of an important nature. That is the story of the Bible. Having done that, they wanted to collect, University of Munich established an institute for the Quranic research in order to compare, because they felt jealous and they wanted to see how the Quran has been transmitted and preserved. And they collected more than 43,000 copies, photocopies of the Holy Quran. And of course, the work was still going on. But then when Professor Hamidullah met with a professor in charge of this project, and he told him that the work of collation of the Quranic manuscripts had not yet been completed. But the result of the examination conducted until then suggested that while some mistakes of calligraphy had been detected in the manuscripts, not a single discrepancy in the text had been discovered. A calligraphic or typographical error found in one manuscript does not recur in another. So the commission, the mistake is the result of an oversight on part of the scribe who has inadvertently missed a word. Should there be a difference in narration, it will be found in many manuscripts. This is not so the case of the Quran. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us in the Quran, Inna nahnu nazzalna dhikr wa inna lahu lahafidhun. We have sent down this dhikr, this Quran, and we are going to preserve it intact. And we have Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was rushing, as the angel was dictating. He wanted to rush to pick those words and memorize it. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told him, لا تحرك به لسانك لتعجل به إن علينا جمعه وقرآنه. Don't rush, because it is our duty to compile it and preserve it and recite it. And we know that it was the practice of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Jibreel alayhi salam used to come and review the Quran, the whole Quran as it was revealed. And in the last year, he visited him twice. And we also know every time a piece of revelation came down, the Prophet would call on the scribes. And we have more than 70 scribes that the Prophet's whose services was used by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the conclusion is, the Quran we have here, there is no other version of the Quran, regardless of the sectarian differences among Muslims from the 1st century. And we have the copies of the Quran, Uthmani version of the Quran, still preserved. The copy is in Tashkent, and it is photocopy also available in other libraries. It is also in Istanbul. The copy of the Quran that was read by Uthman radiallahu anhu, compiled by him, and he was reading it at the time he was assassinated, and the color of the blood is there in that manuscript. And it was written down on skin actually, but of course it's copies of it preserved in various manuscripts in various libraries. So there is only one Quran. Quran has been preserved unlike any other scripture in the world. And of course, we have a beautiful story to compare the Quran with the Old Testament and the New Testament. Imam Kutty, if my memory is correct, cites a story that in Spain, there was this man calligrapher who copied the Bible, the Old Testament, making changes here and there. And then he presented it to a Jewish scholar. He said, it is all fine. He could not detect the errors there. The same he did with the New Testament, and he took it, making changes, introducing here and there. And the Christian scholar admitted it, that it is the right version of the Bible. And he did the same with the Quran. But as soon as the scholar read it, he said, this is not the Quran, this has been tampered with. So, brothers and sisters, let us not doubt the fact that Quran has been transmitted to us, even as there are millions. Any biographical dictionary of Islamic scholars from the early times until now will tell us most of them memorize the entire Quran. And it is a general practice among Muslims to send their children, to memorize the Quran early years. And this practice has continued. And thanks to the way Muslims read the Quran every day, and they don't choose portions of it. They read the entire Quran. And there are people who finish the whole Quran every 3 days or 7 days, at least once a month. I myself read the Quran, the whole Quran, once a month at least minimum. And actually I was inspired to do so when my father died, the honor that Allah gave him. And when I thought about it, one of the reasons is that he would recite the Quran at least 3 juz every day, rain or shine. So I told myself, here I am, people call me an Islamic scholar, and yet I don't read not even 1 juz. So from that time onwards, I started reading at least 1 juz of Quran every single day, alhamdulillah. In Ramadan, I do that more than that. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us establish our faith, strengthen our faith in the incontrovertible evidence of the transmission of the Quran. Quran that we have here is the same as it was recited by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And of course, the Islamic scholars have established the rule that you need to learn the Quran. The Sahaba learned the Quran from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the Sahaba taught it to the next generation. And this has continued thousands passing it on thousands. So no one who is studying the methodology of the biblical criticism should be using the criteria or the assumptions of the biblical criticism projected onto the Quran. This is a big mistake. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save me and you from getting carried away with this kind of, theories. They sit in the ivory tower and formulate theories. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save us, because they don't believe in the revelation. They believe the Quran has been revealed and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has preserved it. And that is what we have today. We have only one version of the Quran, regardless of the sectarian differences among Muslims. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala strengthen our Iman. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. Ya Allah, don't let us swerve away. Don't make our hearts swerve. Get astray from the straight path. وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة, and bestow on us your mercy. إنك أنت الوهاب. You are the dispenser of graces. So I hope I have answered this question. Of course, this is maybe more details needed, but I have done as much as possible given the limited time I have.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. That sounds great, inshallah. We can move on to the next question, inshallah.
Okay, now the next question is the concept of illness in Islam and what we need to be aware of in terms of medical treatment, terminal illness, old age, etc., and the option do not resuscitate. The concept of this is a medical ethics, Islamic medical ethics and issues. These are contemporary issues. It's very, very involved question. So I can only scratch the surface, because details of various, nuances of this various issues cannot be presented here in this forum with a limited time and constraints of the space and time here. First of all, the illness itself. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the Quran teaches us it is Allah who sent down diseases, and it is He who cures the disease. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us that illness, we don't, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests us with illness, for a believer, any test that even the prick of a thorn can help expiate his sins. That's why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, while visiting the sick, is to say tahurun inshallah. That will be a means of purification, a source of purification. The believer look at illness as a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't want to destroy us. He sends the test for us to learn from that experience. If we practice patience, it's very good. It is rewarding. Ajaban li amril mu'min inna amrahu kullahu lahu khair. A believer is a wonderful person. All of his states, whether he is facing a joyous occasion or sorrowful occasion, it's all good for him. In asabatuhu sarra shakara fakana khairan lahu. If a joy comes his way, if he's blessed with some happy situation, something happening good for him, shakara, he thanks Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he's grateful to his Lord, fakana khairan lahu. So it is good for him. By thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he stands to gain the blessings and tremendous rewards. وَإِنْ أَصَابَتْهُ ضَرَّاء. If on the other hand, he is afflicted with a sorrowful, some affliction, something making him sad and, deprived, sabara, he is patient. فَكَانَ خَيْرًا لَهُ. Once again, it turns out good for him. So we are tested with shukr and sabr. At the same time, every day we are tested. We have a lot of things to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for, and we have some, tests. Yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will test us, taking, a member of our family or afflicting with diseases. So we need to be patient. But having said that, Islam teaches us that, if this disease can be cured, we should try to, seek the treatment. The Prophet encouraged us, Tadawu ibadallah, O servants of Allah, receive treatments. Go to the doctor, consult physicians, not quick doctors, but people who are trained. It is wrong for us to assume that Rasulullah has sent down all of the, prescriptions so that prophetic medicine is enough. Prophet ﷺ did not come to practice physical medicine. He is a spiritual medicine. He prescribes spiritual medicine. So of course, for the physical ailments, we need to go to the doctor. Prophet himself used to consult physicians. And that's why Aisha radiallahu anha used to say, when she was asked, how come that you became an expert in medicine also? It's understandable you're an expert in tafsir and hadith and fiqh and Arabic literature. But how did you become an expert in medicine? She said, you know what? The physician used to come visit the Prophet ﷺ, and Prophet ﷺ used to engage them in discourse, converse with them about various prescriptions, about diseases, and I would retain all of this discussion. So of course, the Prophet would ask them for prescription. And Prophet's son, when Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas was sick, he called and told him to consult the best physician, Al-Harith. He was known as the physician of the Arabs at the time. And he, of course, and some of the other medicine prescribed in the hadith, it's the folk medicine. It doesn't mean that we should use them while leaving the scientific medicine, which has been tested. We should use the scientific medicine, and we should not go for these quick practices. Those who say, I will use the prophetic method of treatment to treat you. Having said that, of course, we have spiritual healing in the Quran. We have du'as. Surely we should complement it with the other medications, inshallah. So as for receiving the treatment, just like in Islam, we have, the division of the values, the labels: obligatory, recommended, undesirable, permitted, haram. Treatment itself can fall in one of these 5 categories. It's obligatory for us to receive a treatment if, without receiving the treatment, we endanger our life, we kill ourselves. If our life can be saved by a certain treatment, then we should go for it, because preservation of life is one of the fundamental objectives of the Islamic Sharia. We should take care of our life. Preserving life is very important. But it is haram for us to use methods of treatment which are haram. We cannot use wine as treatment. The things that are forbidden, haram, we cannot use them for treatment. Treatment becomes recommended if a certain treatment is going to enhance the quality of our life or health, then it is recommended. But if you are terminally ill and there is no treatment, there are medical therapy. Of course, you don't need to go for it. We should use, the principle of ghalabatul dhann. Sharia uses it in fiqh, that ghalabatul dhann means, if it is established by the medical community that this person who is terminally ill, there is no reasonable treatment for him. He may be sustained by medical therapy, but you don't occupy the resources which can be used to treat patients who are not terminally ill. And you are, keeping this man alive with this kind of artificial devices. In this case, it's not recommended at all. And Sharia allows for us to refuse treatment. A believer sometimes has that intimation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that, my condition, it's time for me to go. This happened to Abu Bakr Siddiq and other companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Abu Bakr Siddiq, in his deathbed, the Sahaba visits him and said, should we call a doctor for you? He said, I already consulted the doctor. He meant the real doctor, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the intimation he has received from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a ilham, it's called ilham, inspiration from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It can, many, it happens even now for people, and they say, don't take me, my time has come, and you will see this person dying the same day, So it is not always obligatory. It's sometimes recommended, sometimes undesirable, sometimes simply permissible. But having said that, Islam does not teach us to cling to life. If we are reduced to a vegetative state, and you are terminally ill, there is no cure, you are not waiting, the doctor is not waiting for an organ transplant, which would save you, then it is better for us to, say, I don't need, to be sustained by these artificial devices, take off. And you can refuse that treatment as long as you can make that judgment for yourself. You can even write it down. I personally have written it down in my wasiyah that don't keep me alive by this kind of, invasive treatments and, equipments, which will not give a life, a healthy life, life, we don't cling to life. And we believe that the death is not the end of things. It's a gateway to a more abiding, enduring life, the life in the mercy, with the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, eternal life. So the soul survives that physical death. So as Dr. Iqbal said, a believer, when it is time for him to go, he will go with a smile on his face. So this is the Islamic concept of treatment. I hope this is a brief description. Old age, the Prophet ﷺ said there is no treatment for old age. Everybody will get every day, I consider myself now over 70. So every single day I consider as a bonus for me. I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Allah don't, reduce me to the advanced old age. The Prophet told us, to pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not to keep us into the extreme old age, we lose our faculties. Rather, we need to pray, Allahumma matti'na bi asma'ina wa absarina wa quwwatina abadan ma ahyaytana. Ya Allah, make us, enjoy in full measure all of our faculties, our hearing, our sight, our thinking power, and our stamina, as long as we allow us to live. And of course, let us die in a state of, full awareness. You don't want to be reduced to a state when you don't know who is your wife or who is your son, who is your daughter. You don't know who is your friend, who is visiting you. There is no point. So we might as well be willing to go, and don't ask your children to keep you alive, breathing with that, machine. Of course, the decision for that should be made by the expert. 3 medical practitioners who are specialists should say, if they have said there is no more treatment, so we should remove that, machine. And if Allah wants to give us life, He can do that. Without that, we are not created to live by these machines. And of course, we cannot occupy the resources that can be diverted to people who may need it, who are in better need of it, because they have a better chance. So when you are terminally ill, this is, and you can also make that will, don't register to me, also you can do that, and that is allowed. And also the doctors, if 3 physicians have said, don't resuscitate this person because there is no point, of course, it should be also followed. And of course, Islam is a scientific. Islam is not against science. Islam teaches us that we should respect the authorities. Even as you respect Islamic scholars, we need to respect the medical practitioners. And also Islam, it's obligatory for us to get treatment if we have a contagious disease. It's obligatory in that case to get treated, because otherwise we are not only harming ourselves but harming others. We are passing on this. So in the case of this pandemic, COVID, we need to get the treatment, and we need to also isolate ourselves. Prevention is practiced by Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, taught by Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Al-wiqaya khayru min al-ilaj. There is a saying. It's a prophetic also teaching, the idea, wiqaya khayru min al-ilaj. Prevention is better than cure. And the Prophet taught the principle of quarantine, isolating those who are suffering from contagious diseases, so that they are not mixed with the others to pass on that virus. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us all. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us enjoy. And Islam teaches us that we need to exercise, we need to be physically active, mentally active, we need to read and study and reflect, because when we do so, when we use our muscles, physical muscle, emotional muscle, intellectual muscle, spiritual muscle, we will not lose it, inshallah. Use it or lose it. And this is an Islamic concept. So I will urge you all to take care of the health and follow all of the guidelines. But unnecessarily, you are a rich man, so you can afford that machine. No, that's not the Islamic approach, because we don't cling to this life. If it's time for us to go, we should be willing to go, surrender ourselves to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I hope I have covered it.
Yes, that was great, Sheikh. Barakallah fik. We can move on to the next question, inshallah ta'ala.
Okay, the next question is, if my hair is thinning, am I allowed to add hair to it? I wear hijab and it is just to cover what I lost, not to add length. In the fiqh, it's extremely controversial issue. Having said that, because why? Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, there is a hadith of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, La'ana Allahul wasila wal mustawsila. The Prophet has cursed those who, add, hair to the hair they have to make it large. Using the human hair to make the hair long. This is a deception actually. And that is why the Prophet ﷺ, the scholars say it is haram. But having said that, if you are using artificial hair, scholars say it may be allowed as long as you are not intending to deceive anyone. And this is the standard ruling among the scholars. Having said that, on further reflection on all of these various fatwas, some scholars have come up with the idea that because in Islam we are allowed to transplant, so can we transplant hair? Surely it's permitted if you are transplanting from your own hair, from other parts into your hair, you are allowed. They say, some scholars also say, you can also apply the same principle, use if it can be transplanted from the human hair from another person, it can be allowed. Or you can also use other methods of growing hair. If there are methods, of course, some of the traditional medical practitioners recommend some of the, treatments for growing hair. You can use that, nothing wrong with that. Of course, no question asked about it. And the other method is, using that wig. Some scholars have allowed it, but many scholars have disapproved of that. This is what I can say about this issue. So, having said that, if you have this completely hair is gone and there is nothing because of the chemotherapy and others, scholars have allowed it as long as you don't mean to deceive or cheat anyone. The cheating, especially when you are offering yourself as a marriage candidate, and you are, you have this hair, artificial hair or wig that you're using, of course, as cheating. Cheating is not allowed as long as you are not doing that. They say it is allowed in circumstances like that. And that's all what I can say. This is a very, very contentious issue among scholars. I personally cannot make up my own opinion on this. I am only citing you the opinion of scholars. Maybe further study and research by scholars may come up uh, with new fatwas on this. Let us wait for that. Until then, I hope I have given you some insight on this. That's all what I can say now. Okay, Brother Mamoon.
Yes, that sounds great, inshallah, Sheikh. Barakallah fik.
Okay, now I can move on.
Yes, you can, inshallah. We'll move on to the questions, the new ones that we arrived today, inshallah.
I have been separated from my husband and moved out from over a year from the house. He initiated the civil divorce, but he has not given me an Islamic divorce. Am I divorced Islamically also? Well, if he has initiated the divorce, he cannot refuse to give you Islamic divorce. If he does that, he is doing what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has clearly forbidden. وَلَا تُضَرُّهُنَّ. You are not supposed to inflict harm. وَلَا يَحِلُّ لَكُمْ. Rasulullah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in another place, you are not allowed to hold women as prisoners, meaning holding them, neither treating them as properly as wives, honorably, nor releasing them from the bondage of marriage honorably. This is not allowed. In a case like that, the verdict of the judge can be used by an imam. Based on that verdict, he can issue an Islamic divorce certificate. I have been doing this for years. I have done that in Islamic Foundation. I have done it in Islamic Institute. So don't worry, but wait for your final dissolution paper, the divorce certificate from the court. And once you have that in your hand, you can go to an imam who is qualified to issue this kind of certificate based on the fatwa of the minorities, fiqh of minorities. Then you can, after that, you can marry, anyone you want. Before that, before you receive that court divorce certificate, I wouldn't recommend, I wouldn't allow you, I wouldn't say you should go and marry another person. Don't do that. It's illegal. Even as marriage should be legal here, the same way the divorce also should be legally done. We don't have a Sharia court here. Any imam saying otherwise, he is not giving you the best advice. I have been an imam serving this community from 1973. And I have so many cases in front of me. So I would urge you, don't you ever, get into another marriage relationship, another nikah through an imam without getting that final divorce certificate and getting that license, marriage license, and get your marriage done legally, get your divorce done legally. That's the advice the best advice. That is the advice I will give to my daughter or granddaughter, whoever. Since you are my sister, I would urge you to follow this advice. So wait for that. And once you have that, you can come to me, inshallah, give me a call or email me and come, and I will examine your certificate and I will issue a proper Islamic endorsing that court divorce as a valid Islamic divorce, inshallah.
This is a follow-up, inshallah, Sheikh.
Yes.
So I guess really the question that would stem from this here is that is a legal divorce in a non-Muslim from a non-Muslim court, is that considered as divorce? I'll tell you the reason why we're asking this question is because at many times people would do legal divorce for various reasons. One of them, for instance, could be for financial, for financial reasons. For instance, so if a person, for instance, I don't know the examples I would have, but the specific example that we're having from one person here, for instance, is that the husband chooses to divorce her legally because it's easier for her to get welfare, but he is not, for instance, he's not actually divorcing her. So the question is, does a legal divorce in a non-Muslim country equate to an actual legitimate religious divorce?
You know, in Islam, we don't have a lahir and batin that contradict. You know, as Imam Ibn Taymiyyah and others tell us, divorce is divorce. There is only one, you know, the word divorce means that a person is separated. The marriage bond has been severed. This is divorce. So if the court divorce in Islam, the divorce take place in one of three ways. Number one is initiated by the husband. This is called talaq. Number two is khul, meaning divorce initiated by the wife. Number three is fasq, a judge dissolving that marriage. In this case, you know, the court divorce can fall in one of these categories. If the husband has initiated the divorce and he has written down, he's making that application, what is he saying there? He's saying that I'm divorcing my wife. You know, the scholars have allowed even kinaya becomes a divorce. You understand?
Yes,
So,
I hear you.
yes,
But the question.
Yeah. So I'm
Sorry,
coming
the
to that.
question, the difference here is that we're talking about the intention itself. So the person would have done the actual, he wouldn't have even done the love, but he would do the legal actions without the actual intention.
Well, no, you cannot separate the two in Islam, especially when he has made that application for divorce. And you know that you cannot say, I didn't have the intention. I didn't have the intention. Unless he is coerced into doing that. You know,
I'm
because
sorry, Sheikh, unless he is?
he is forced.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Unless he is forced. But that is not the case because, you know, a court divorce takes, you know, months actually. So he had time to premeditate on that. And he has done that. And then, you know, the wife doesn't contest it. And the judge has pronounced it. Because we don't have a Muslim qali, you know, we don't have a Sharia court, then in this case, some law is better than no law. Otherwise, it will be confusion. So you can use all of these three methods of divorce: dissolution by the judge itself. In an Islamic court, a judge can dissolve a marriage, even though the husband did not ask for it, wife did not ask for it. There are reasons for separating the two, and the judge can do that, dissolve that marriage. So all of these principles of the Sharia, when you take this into account, maqasid of Sharia, we cannot. First of all, we cannot cheat the system. If we do that, we are opening the door. We are, you know, actually it will work against us. And we are supposed to maintain law and order. And what are we doing that? Opening the door for corruption in society. You know, a Muslim should be his secret life and the open life should be the same. You cannot cheat the system. You know, the husband goes and visits the wife and yet they are legally divorced, and just for sake of welfare, astaghfirullah al-azim, this is not. And that is not, because that income tainted with haram. You know, we should make sure that the income that we earn is purely halal as much as possible. And of course, this kind of income, you know, no Muslim should be allowed to live on that, inshallah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala his money, and he will enrich us if we seek ways of earning a livelihood by means that are approved and pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I would insist there is no way of separating the two, inshallah. This is the ruling based on the maqasid of Sharia, but other ruling is based on the letter of what is written down in the sources. That will be, by doing that, we make a mockery of the entire Sharia. And this is why people are, as soon as they hear the name of the Sharia, they are looking at these corrupt practices, this kind of double face. A person says, I am divorced, and yet he is not divorced. And he says that he has divorced this wife in order to take another wife, and only did that, Islamically, so that he can this and that. How can you live, as a split personality? This is, and a Muslim should be, upright and is truthful. He should be honest. Integrity is, we should be people of integrity, credential. And the Prophet ﷺ taught us that we should be, teaching integrity. And that is, even me, do you know me? Can you trust me? So how can you trust a Muslim who says, I'm divorced legally, but Islamically I'm not divorced? Astaghfirullah al-Azim. How can we? This is not integrity. Actually, so we should go beyond the letter of the Sharia to the spirit of the Sharia, and that is what we should, and that gives the beauty of the Sharia, inshallah. And if people were to understand the soul and the spirit of the Sharia, they would have no reason to find faults with the Sharia, because it is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is Al-Hakim, all-wise and all-knowing.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. That's excellent.
Okay, there is a final question. We don't have more time than that. Is about the ruling pertaining to hijab. We see many influencers removing their hijab and influencing young sisters to do the same. What are the minimum requirements for hijab? Is a Muslim woman really low in Iman if she does not wear the hijab? First of all, I want to correct, unfortunately today, including myself, are forced to use the word hijab. Actually, this was not the word used in the Quran. The hijab, this partition was only for the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, Ummahatul Mu'mineen, and there is a context for that. But unfortunately, today the word hijab has been used for the specific modest attire prescribed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for Muslim women. Of course, modesty is prescribed for men as well in Islam, but the modest attire for Muslim women have been prescribed in the Quran. The Quran should be understood as it was understood consensually by the people, the first audience. That is how we explain the Quran. If we explain it by using any other method, that is not scientific, that is not sound, that will put upside down everything. So you can take any text of the Quran and then make your own interpretation, as people are doing it. I read somewhere a so-called scholar saying, if two consenting adults, even though you are married, they engage in sexual intercourse, that's not zina. Astaghfirullah al-Azim. Of course, where did they come up with this? Because they are using the so-called agnostic methodology, and also not trying to understand the text by the way it was understood. The first Muslims who heard the Quran, how did Abu Bakr, how did Uthman, how did Umar ibn Khattab, how did Ali ibn Abi Talib, how did Ibn Abbas, all of those people understood the verses pertaining to the women's dress. Of course, we have that ayah in the Quran, Surah An-Nur, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses Muslim women saying, Yudrina alayhinna min juyubihinna. ولا يبدين قل للمؤمنات يغضون من أبصارهن ويحفظن فروجهن ولا يبدين زينتهن إلا ما ظهر منها وليضربن بخمرهن على جيوبهن. Say to the believing women, female believers, let them lower their gazes. As men are ordered to lower their gazes, women are also ordered to lower their gazes and preserve their modesty, keep themselves chaste and modest, and let them not display their charm and beauty except what is apparent. And وَلْيَضْرِبْنَ بِخُمُرِهِنَّ عَلَى جِيُوبِهِنَّ. Let them lower their scarves. Khumur is that which you cover your head, scarf. Let them lower the scarf over their bosom. If you really understand, it's 100%, it's very, very clear, beautifully prescribes the modest attire that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prescribed, because first of all, lower your gaze, and then lower the scarf and covering the bosom, clear that face can be exposed. There is no need to cover. Okay, it's very, very clear from there. As our Mufassirin, including starting from Ibn Jarir al-Tabari, and majority of them said, clear evidence in the Quran that a Muslim woman should cover their hair and their bosom. And they are only allowed to, display, uncover their face, and of course hands and their feet, according to some, and of course a partial. Some scholars say, they wear their, whatever little on their, upper part of their hand. This is allowed. But majority say everything except face and hands should be covered. And this is the consensus, that anything other than this, a Muslim woman should cover, unless they are in front of the maharim, or of course, your father, your brother, your son, of course, your close blood relations whom you cannot marry. Of course, then there is another story. But going out, they should cover their hair. And definitely, this is the understanding. This was the way they understood it. Because when this verse was revealed, the Prophet sent people to, read this. As soon as the Sahaba heard that, Aisha radhiyallahu anha reports that, what a wonderful sisters, believers were these Ansar women. They rushed to pick up whatever they could, covering their hair, and it is look like crows, black scarves on their heads. And of course, so this is the understanding, and it's very, very clearly stated by Ibn Abbas and others as well. And this is the consensus among Muslim scholars until we have this kind of people who are trained in the secular system, who is projecting this kind of interpretation onto the Quran. And of course, that cannot be accepted as, agreeing with the proper Islamic methodology. That is what I can say, inshallah. I think.
Yes, I don't know.
What are the minimum requirements? I already mentioned that. But having said that, some people think you have to wear abaya. As long as you use anyone, sari or whatever you cover, that is fine. Nobody should say Muslims all Muslim women all over the world should wear abaya. That is used in Saudi Arabia or Qatar or Gulf countries. They can use whatever, and this is the Islamic method that followed by Muslims all over the world until this influence from the Gulf countries came. So everybody is wearing abaya as if it is a requirement. No, as long as the cloth they are wearing is decent and it's not see-through, it's modest, it's hard, so they can wear loose pants and things like that, trousers, whatever, as long as it's modest and not transparent and befitting the chaste woman. And actually, having said that, the final part of the question is, a Muslim woman really low in Iman if she does not wear the hijab? I cannot make that statement. You let her decide for herself. If somebody has, made a mistake or committed a sin, I cannot say they are lacking in Iman. They have violated one of the terms. But having said that, I am not the judge. That judgment we should leave to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We should not look down on people because they are not covering their hair or whatever, as long as they are modest. Sometimes they have reason, maybe, God knows, and they are to answer before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for whatever explanation they have. But having said that, my answer is that Islamic methodology of interpreting the text does not allow for any other interpretations. Unless we change this methodology altogether, then we have a new form of Islam. Unfortunately, that is not the Islam of the Messenger of Allah and the Muslim community as they have understood the scripture down through centuries. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us preserve that organic tradition of Islam as much as possible. Having said that, we can make interpretations in issues other than that, inshallah, where there is no explicit text, when it is warranted to make that kind of interpretations, inshallah.
Excellent, Sheikh. Sheikh, there is a quick question that's online right now. If you have a minute to answer it, inshallah.
Yes.
So there's someone is asking, is it allowed for a wife to leave her husband for his betterment if the wife cannot give him children nor fulfill his needs?
Well, she has to decide for herself. Having said that, she should ask also, see if there is any way for both of them to live together. If it can be done, they should try to exhaust all means of doing that. If having done that, she feels that she has to leave him, then she can be the judge for herself, inshallah. If there is no way they can reconcile, where the Prophet ﷺ allowed for women to seek divorce when the husband cannot fulfill. The same, if the wife cannot fulfill, and of course they can separate, they can go their separate ways. That is the Islamic, because sexual fulfillment for those who are tormented by the sexual desire is a very important consideration for marriage in Islam. So, but many others can tolerate it. So if this person cannot tolerate it, then if the wife decides, that's fine. That's fine, inshallah.
Khair, inshallah ta'ala. I don't know if you have any more, if you have a minute or two for one more question. They'll have a question that just came to us. So this question here is from a sister as well. She's saying that there's a Shi'i brother who's interested in her hand in marriage. She is Sunni and she wanted to know the main difference between the two and if it's okay for her to proceed to marry him. She said she admires his personality and she feels that they are compatible outside of the difference of the fact that he is Shi'i and she is Sunni.
Okay, the question should be asked, what kind of a Shi'i he is. If he is belonging to the Isna Ashari, then 12 or Shia, Jafari, definitely she can marry him as long as they make a contract. Because
sorry, Sheikh. So I'm sorry, just because I think I misunderstood your question. You're saying if he is Ithna Ashari or if he is Jafari?
Yeah, the same thing. They are that's Jafari and Ithna Ashari is the same.
Okay.
They don't belong to the Ghulat, the extreme Shia. The Ithna Ashari and Jafari, the differences between Sunnis and that school is, of course, only in regards to the concept of imamat or succession to the Prophet ﷺ, who is the rightful caliph and things like that. So, of course, other than that, there are other differences, minor differences, but they are not out of the fold of Islam. A Muslim community has allowed them to make pilgrimages down through centuries. That means they are Muslims. We cannot declare them as kuffar. So, but having said that, marriage is a long-term partnership, lifelong partnership. So they have to sort out how they are going to deal with those differences. I have a detailed answer given on my site, askthescholar.com. So I would urge her to refer to that answer. So discuss, all those things in advance. How we are going to deal with those differences? If he tolerates her to practice her Sunni version of Islam, definitely she can go for that marriage, as long as they come up with some kind of a mutual understanding as to how to deal with the other differences. And it has to be written down before embarking on that marriage. Otherwise, maybe they are in for trouble, because sometimes even if we marry a Hanafi, between Shafi and Hanafi, sometimes there is this kind of differences may arise, and then it can, sometimes people are rigid, and it may end up in breaking the marriage. So I would advise, because the issue between Shia and Sunni is more than the issue between Hanafi and Shafi. So I would urge her to discuss all those issues, so that they have come up with an understanding, and write it down so that they don't break this rule. But if he forces her to convert to that Ithna Ashari, then it is not recommended at all, inshallah. Is that okay?
Yes, Sheikh. I'm just looking here on your website to see if there's if I can just post a question here for it. This is a question from 2014. Is that the one you're referring to? It's a long-time question.
There are some questions, some answers, different answers, some are more detailed. So if you are unable to find the detailed one, I will ask her to email me, and I will forward it to her.
Okay, I do have an answer here. I'm just going to post that online, inshallah, for those of you who are following us, inshallah, and want a specific answer to that. That's going to be on our Facebook specifically, inshallah. Sheikh, may Allah Azza wa Jal preserve you, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant you Jannah, inshallah, in the highest of all levels. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us the benefit of your knowledge, and allow you, inshallah, to gain the reward of it, inshallah ta'ala. And if you can finalize, inshallah, today's session.
May I make a request that anybody who has questions, want me to answer the questions properly, please send it in advance in writing. You can email it to Brother Mamoon, or the email, I think,
yes.
is provided.
So we have a couple of different ways of doing it. You can actually write your question right now in Right Now's comments, and we will answer it next week, inshallah ta'ala. The second option you have here is that we do have a link that we have posted on today's video as well. We have a short URL for it, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Click on that. A form will come out to you. Then you can go ahead and fill the question. You have a chance to ask 2 different questions, inshallah ta'ala, in each one of the forms. Otherwise, you can mail it to us to media@islam.ca. All different types of options. You can DM us, directly message us on our YouTube, on our Facebook, and also on our Instagram, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Jazakumullah khair.
Inshallah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, forgive us if we have said anything wrong. May Allah forgive us. It is from shaitan. If we have said it right, it is a pure grace and blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Glory and praise be to you, Allah. We bear witness there is no God but you. We ask forgiveness of you and return to you in repentance. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.